Are you running wireless or wired?
We're going to start with live questions. But then oh, I'm just doing name and address.
Everyone, thank you for showing up tonight. I believe it's supposed to start at 6:30, 6:32. Can we get started, please? Thank you.
I can be heard out there? Yep, I think so. Good evening. I'm Rob Antico from MassDOT. I'm here to talk to you tonight about the Hall-Whitaker and Kernwood Ave bridge replacements. I want to thank the City of Beverly and the Mayor for allowing us to provide this update tonight. I'm going to go through the presentation, and there'll be plenty of time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. So if everybody could just hold their questions until the end of the presentation, that'd be appreciated. So we published the notice for this meeting in all the publications listed here, as well as getting the notice over to the mayor's office, and they're posted around town as well. So tonight's agenda.
I want to ask a question right away. Can you get rid of the light on the screen so they can see it?
That would be someone else's. Thanks for that. Is that a lot better, I hope? Okay, great. So tonight's agenda is on the screen now. We're going to go through the timeline and how we arrived here, the conditions of the Hall-Whitaker and Kernwood Ave Bridge, the project development status, its impacts, our preferred concepts, next steps, and then questions and answers. So our project objective is number one, to provide a reliable travel route between the Wildside neighborhood and downtown Beverly. Currently, it's only open to bicycles and pedestrians with a traffic detour over Kernwood due to the closure. As quickly as practicable, safely restore vehicular traffic at Bridge Street. And three, full bridge replacement of the Hall-Whitaker and Kernwood Avenue. So how did we get here? As we routinely do, we're inspecting the Hall-Whitaker Bridge, and here's some of the recent dates in which it was inspected. In addition to the routine inspections, we were doing special member inspections. And then in June, an updated bridge rating came in, and that bridge rating led to the closure of the Hall-Whitaker Bridge. So it's closed to vehicular traffic, and it's still open for pedestrians, bicycles, and navigation. So again, the initial recommendation for the Hall-Whitaker Bridge due to its existing condition was close it to vehicular traffic. The rating was reviewed and assessed by the state bridge engineer, and the bridge is beyond its useful life, and the extended deterioration and necessary repairs eliminates this bridge as a candidate for repair and reconstruction and warrants a full replacement. Our recommended action at this point is prioritizing and restoring vehicular traffic, demolish the existing bridge, construct a temporary fixed bridge on the same line. Adjacent to the Hall-Whitaker Bridge is the Kernwood Ave Bridge, which we currently had been it was currently funded or programmed to be replaced in 2027, so we've already started in on design. The bridge is posted for 10-ton vehicles, which is limiting for truck, emergency response, school bus, and other access across the bridge. MassDOT is currently preparing plans for significant repairs to be made to this bridge, so it can remain in service. until a temporary bridge can be installed in the location at the Hall-Whitaker, and this bridge can be designed and developed and then eventually replaced. A new temporary Hall-Whitaker bridge would provide reliable traffic detour during the full bridge replacement of this structure. So that's the importance of getting that temporary bridge back at Hall-Whitaker. So the traffic management plan. So the Hall-Whitaker Bridge currently is closed, as I keep saying, to vehicles, but it's open to pedestrians and bicycles. As you can see, it's highlighted in red there. So the future bridge replacement will include a planned detour for pedestrians and bicycles on existing roadways. There should be advanced outreach for that to the public, and the goal will be to minimize disruptions to pedestrians and bicycles. And the detour routes during future bridge replacement, the vehicles will routinely, the vehicle routes currently rely on Elliott Street, Route 62, and McPherson Street. Bicycles have a routine, a number of route options. They will likely follow the existing vehicular detour. Significant pedestrian detours, there will be a significant pedestrian detour during construction, so we'll limit the duration of that closure whenever we can. So just in summary and recommended approach, both bridges are in poor condition. Hall-Whitaker's condition requires a bridge closure to vehicular traffic. Major repair contract will be performed on the Kernwood Ave Bridge starting in 2023 to extend its service life while the project development proceeds for the permanent replacement of the bridge. And a temporary fixed bridge will be installed in the existing alignment at Hall-Whitaker. It's expected to be open in 2026.
Amanda can do one in Florida in 2 weeks.
Yeah, unacceptable.
So, if you could just hold your questions until the end of the presentation, this won't be that long. Appreciate that. So, as you can see, the current alignment is where we're proposing the temporary bridge. There could be alternative alignments, but given the uncertainty of the approvals of the permitting and right-of-way that would take extensive time, the recommendation is to construct a temporary bridge on the existing alignment. We could explore an alternate alignment south of the existing alignment. We haven't vetted this completely. It would probably still have more extensive permitting and right-of-way implications that would extend the process. But like I said, we haven't fully vetted that, but we certainly can look at that further. How has the design progressed to date? So in terms of the project development status for both bridges, there's been a number of things completed. Traffic counts, utility coordination, alignment studies, navigation report. In progress, there's a number of things going on as well. Alternative analysis report, bridge type selection worksheet, span configurations, profiles, utility coordination, as well as coordination with the city of Beverly. So there's the pre-closure traffic study, which was done for the design of the bridges before the closure. You can see on this slide a number of locations that traffic counts were done, and that data will be used for designing the bridge as well as detours.
We know that
You had no traffic.
What are those numbers? Do we get to see those?
We can get to that.
Go back to that last slide. You had no traffic.
I think we're taking the questions at the end, if you want to hold those questions to the end.
We've been waiting 4 months for something.
So, pre-traffic closure study.
Yeah, let's take questions as we go. Let's do it that way. Let's do it our way for James. Our way.
questions, so. The traffic studies were begun prior to the closing of the Hall-Whitaker Bridge. Once the bridge was closed, there's new traffic data that was needed. So for standard traffic, new traffic counts were conducted after Labor Day following the school reopening. The counts have been updated for post-COVID, and the data was recently received and is being analyzed. The traffic volume changes since the bridge closure can be seen here. They all make sense. Everything along the detour you see went up in terms of vehicles per hour, and everything else like that went down. So ongoing traffic initiatives, MassDOT Auto Grant was awarded to the city of Beverly. It's being used for LA Street Route 62 signal repairs and upgrades, as well as adaptive signal system implementations.
Only way, but that's not the bridge.
Exactly.
MassDOT is in partnership with the city of Beverly, traffic consultant, collecting traffic volumes and data along current detour routes to assess the congestion due to the closure. And MassDOT is developing a design for supplemental warning signs to be installed in advance of the Kernwood Ave Bridge for roadway closures due to bridge openings for boat crossings. What are the environmental and cultural resource impacts? As you can see here, the Hall-Whitaker is surrounded by an environmental resource area. That red box also shows the right-of-way impacts or potential impacts. Same thing with Kernwood Avenue. The salt marsh and the right-of-way can be seen in that red box. So what is the preferred approach? So our preferred approach is to demolish the existing Hall-Whitaker Bridge, maintain the existing navigational channel location and piers, construct new foundations supported on temporary piles, erect a prefabricated panel bridge on the existing bridge alignment, complete related underground utility relocations, coordinate with utilities. We anticipate construction to start in 2024 and be completed in 2026.
But we need a bridge today. We need it today. Why can't you start it now?
So to continue on with what we're proposing, you can see our proposed cross-section of the temporary bridge here, trying to keep it in the existing right-of-way to limit the impacts of right-of-way, to get it done more quickly. Anything outside the right-of-way, we just extend the process. We're proposing 2 11-foot vehicular lanes, 2 4-foot shoulders, and 1 5-foot sidewalk. There would be a freestanding bridge, and keep the same fixed navigational clearance and height and width. This proposal would be shifting to the north of those existing utility poles, but staying within the limited right-of-way. You can see the ghosting of the bridge in white, how it has to kind of fit in there between those utility poles, and we might even have to move one potentially. So the project development timeline, so what does that mean? The project development means preparing all the necessary documents for public bidding. These documents include design plans and specs, all the necessary environmental permitting, all necessary right-of-way, utility coordination and force accounts, advertised bid, and contract award. These timelines can also be seen on these slides here. This lends itself to why it takes so long, right? So here's for a temporary bridge. Environmental permitting process can be anywhere from 18 to 24 months. And this design development progresses simultaneously to this process of permitting. Additionally, there's a right-of-way process that we may or may not have to go through, 10 to 14 months. And again, the design development progresses simultaneously while going through this process. So once the temporary bridge is designed and permitted, we'd advertise and bid in the spring of 2024, award that same spring, and the construction would be completed sometime in mid-2026. So the award, the advertising and bid process, as well as the award, would happen just after that bridge is constructed, and the permanent Kernwood construction would happen. Keep in mind the temporary bridge will be open, so vehicles will be going over that bridge at that time. That would be the preferred detour route. Kernwood would be completed in 2031 when the permanent Bridge Street construction would begin and be completed in 2035.
Where you been all this time?
So, so here's a look at the traffic implications along that timeline. As you can see, we'll be starting with Bridge Street being closed, and then construction would start in 2024 and end in 2026. And then that bridge would open to vehicular traffic, and the Kernwood Avenue Bridge would begin construction. That construction would be completed at the end of 2031. That bridge would open, and then begin construction for the permanent Bridge Street Bridge, which would be completed in 2035. So the benefits to this method would be prioritizing Bridge Street vehicular traffic restoration, and that would reopen sooner. It accelerates the replacement of the Kernwood Ave and minimizes reliance on the old mechanical and super and substructure. The new temp bridge eliminates the old bridge vehicular and bus emergency vehicle loading restrictions and limitations. So the risks involved are Bridge Street mechanical is in poor condition. You know, if there's a failure there, then there'd be a longer bike and ped detour. So that has to stay operational till 2024. And the Kernwood substructure, superstructure, mechanical are all in poor condition. If there's a closure or failure there, that will eliminate existing vehicle detours that we're using now. So that would need to stay into operation until 2027. Let me go back to this. We looked at a variety of alternatives, worked along with the mayor's office, took a lot of questions, examined a lot of different sequences, and of all the alternatives that we considered, this concept offers the least amount of risk for emergency bridge roadway closure. How we keep you informed? You can email us at this address. We don't have our websites project specific up to date just yet, but you could visit our website and then also email the chief engineer's office. Mail in questions to the chief engineer's office. So we're ready for questions and answers at this point. Sounds like everybody else is too. So at this point, we typically open up to elected officials first. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Mayor Cahill. There. Let's see, why don't we leave that?
Why don't we pull that down and let's raise that?
You don't think we need
They might want to look at it.
Okay, folks. So this is what we're going to do next. Okay. Representative Paracella is here. Councilor Rotundo's here. Senator Lovely tested positive for COVID yesterday, and so she can't be here. Her district director, Rosa Alvarado, is here. We want to get to you. Just want to give you, and I'm going to ask the other local elected officials to come up. Before I do that, I want to make sure we have a bunch of your other local elected officials here. Would you please raise your hand? I don't want to miss you. We got Councilor at Large, Brendan Sweeney, Ward 3 Councilor Steve Crowley, Ward 6 Councilor Matt St. Hilaire, Ward 4 Councilor Scott Hausman. I saw City Council President Julie Flowers. There you are, Councilor, and Councilor at Large Hannah Bowen. Am I missing anybody else? Okay. So this is scheduled from 6:30 to 8. We'll go after 8 if we need to. Want to make sure that thoughts you have, questions you have, get to these folks. It's a combination of MassDOT officials as well as VHB, the engineering firm that they brought on board to do this work. So look, we've been having these meetings and trying to bring questions to them and get information back to them, trying to get a sense of this. They've been trying to get a lot of work done over the course of the summer, as we talked about earlier this summer. When they came to us with a kind of a partial report, and they talked about, and you saw it on one of the slides, the projected calendar of needing one or the other of the Hall-Whitaker or the Kernwood closed really at all times for the next 13 years. You all saw that slide. None of us like that. So that has us all going back to square one and questioning everything again. So there are a lot of questions that, look, we really appreciate the work that MassDOT is doing. The chief engineer for the state is here with us tonight, Carrie LaValle. Carrie works on, she oversees every project that's out there. And so, having her attention and the district team's attention, Paul Stedman and Frank Zazinski are the District 4 leaders for MassDOT, and they're here tonight as well. So, we've been working with them. We want to partner with them. They want to partner with the city. There are a lot of questions we still have. We question, and I think it's important that these conversations happen. Tonight's an important one. We question if there's a package of repairs coming for Kernwood, can that package hold that bridge together long enough to skip the temp process and go directly to permanent on the Hall-Whitaker? We should have that conversation tonight. We've been asking that. We also have been saying, if we have to go temp on the Hall-Whitaker, we don't want to have to then tear it down, right? We want to be able to keep it open until the permanent Hall-Whitaker is eventually built and open. That's why we started asking again about an alternative pathway for it over to Federal Street. So those things are there. We're asking those questions. We're trying to work through the data. We also are questioning every timeline assumption. Now, the MassDOT and VHB folks, they do this all the time. The timelines can be tough. The agencies at federal and state level, a lot of it, as you can see, doesn't happen at the same time. It's sequential. But we keep asking, is there a way with all of us together trying to kind of lock arms and push on this, that we can shorten timelines, that we can get more done at the same time? So we keep looking at that. We're going to keep working with this team on that. That's enough out of me right now. Representative and council, do you want to come up for a minute, and then we'll turn to the residents? You come right up here, please. Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be real quick because this is your meeting and I want to hear from you. I just want to let you know that we are pushing very hard to try to increase the timeline and make it quicker. We've already talked to the governor's office. The governor will talk to the new governor, whoever that shall be, to try to push this timeline to make sure that we try to get this done faster. And I was as shocked as you are about the timeline that was proposed. So we're really pushing hard to try to make this faster. And I just did have one question that I wanted to throw out there that hopefully you can answer. Just wondering why that temporary bridge, the Hall-Whitaker, not just be a permanent bridge, would be one and done. You could just explain that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Paracello. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I've been listening to all your concerns and questions since the bridge shut, and I want to know that. I have been bringing it to the mayor's attention. The biggest thing that I'm hearing right now is we've all accepted the bridge closed. We know it has been, but it's traffic mitigation that we need to also be concerned and address that as well. Representative Paracello really did ask the question: is why? What's the difference in permitting a temporary as opposed to a permanent bridge? And the other question I've been getting a lot of is, in the event that the bridge gets closed, will pedestrian traffic be allowed on the Hall-Whitaker? What would be the situation there? Because there is the train station that a lot of the Ryle-siders use to walk and take their bikes right now to the train station. So that's the other big question that's been asked me recently, if in the event that the bridge is to be closed. Again, it is your meeting. I want to make sure you're all allowed and be heard by the state. I mean, it is our job to push the federal agencies as well, to see where we can get it moving further. We have been, at least in the city level and the state level, pushing MassDOT, but as well as, we need to push Senator Warren and Markey, as well as Representative or Congressman Moulton too. So just be aware that each time you call me, I promise you that I am hearing, I'm answering you, and I am bringing it to the mayor's office. So just please make sure you're loud and clear and let MassDOT hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Representative. So, a couple of questions. We've asked about that question of why temp at all with the package of repairs coming to Kernwood. I know you have thoughts on that. Do you want to share a little bit of that now?
Sure. I think the best insurance policy is the temporary bridge. We are doing repairs, but those repairs won't be done immediately. Those repairs will take some time. So if we start the process of design and permitting the temporary bridge, we'd at least have a jump on that. The reliability of even after the repairs for the Kernwood Avenue Bridge, not so sure how reliable that will be, or there is an inherent risk as to possible more closures for that bridge if we have to go the full length of a permanent bridge at Hall-Whitaker.
So we want to get them to answer Councilor Rotundo's question, and then I'll start asking you folks to come up.
I just want to build off of that. So my name's Carrie LaValle, Chief Engineer. So I just want to build off of the question which you guys were having about temporary versus permanent. The reason why the permanent would take longer is because we are planning to put in a temporary fixed bridge. A movable bridge, unfortunately, takes longer to design. We want to accelerate this, so we're working to shorten our timeline for the permitting, but we right now are concerned that if we take the full time to design a movable bridge, that it would push it further out. That's why we want to present these options to you. If that is the way you want to move forward and to have only a permanent structure go in place, it would mean the current bridge is closed for a longer time. That's what we wanted to explain to you, but I'm sure you're going to have more questions about it. I just want to make it clear that we did look at that alternative. We did present it to the mayor's office. Our concern was the design of that would be longer than 24, which is what we're showing now. And we just wanted to get you guys a new structure out there that you could get vehicles over sooner. That also would take some of the risk that Rob was referring to off of Kernwood, because we're concerned about the length that Kernwood would have to stay operable. Again, that would mean the design would take longer, and we would be designing both at the same time, but it would push out the replacement of any structure in that area. So that was part of what we looked at. Again, I want to open up for you guys to have as many questions you want about that process, and that we can do. I just wanted to kind of explain how we vetted it, but I want to provide that we did look at that alternative.
So I guess my follow-up question to that is, why can't we consider, because we're only seeing that the Hall-Whitaker Bridge opens 19 times in the course of the year for the Bass Haven Yacht Club, so it's a very small amount. Why can't we consider just making it a permanent, fixed structure, and maybe look at the Bass Haven Yacht Club for some considerations? I have to assume with the rising of the seas that you're going to raise the height of the bridge to begin with.
We were proposing that, yes.
Which will maybe allow more boat traffic from the Bass Haven, which then maybe will force the Bass Haven to consider not having their boats there. It still can be a working yacht club, because that's what it really is. But maybe it will have to, they'll have to consider moving their boats, trailering them, as opposed to launching them by water and trailering them to maybe the Kernwood or the marina over in Salem. So I guess why are we not even considering the permanent fixed bridge?
So some of the permitting that we have to do is a federal permit, which is with the U.S. Coast Guard. And so we could vet that option, but we'd have to get them to agree to it as well. It's considered a navigable waterway. This is not something that the state provides. This is, again, the Coast Guard has made that decision. So right now it's set a certain way, but we can definitely reach out to them and see if this is an option they could do.
So you haven't considered that option yet, but it's...
We were worried that the Coast Guard would make us go through the permit process, and they could deny us at the end, because they generally want to keep navigable waterways moving in the same manner that they are. But we can reach out to them further if you'd want to do that.
I mean, like I said, I think that would be a reasonable ask, considering that the amount that it's opening up, we know there's more vehicular traffic going over the Hall-Whitaker than the Kernwood.
Correct.
And I get the, marine law, but this is something that we're seeing chokehold. And the reality is you're going to shut the bridge twice. So that's the other concern is we're going to get on the back end again for 3 more years or 4 years when the permanent bridge goes in. So there's the other situation that's going to concern for our outsiders right now is we're affected right now. We knew that we would be inconvenienced at some point in time, but now we're going to be inconvenienced twice.
Right.
And regardless of permitting, we knew currently, even if you were to put a temporary bridge with the hope of Kernwood getting these programmed fixes, we're still taking a risk with the temporary bridge as opposed to going to a permanent bridge. So the risk is there regardless. So I think that, I know that's what a lot of people are wondering is let's just look at more of a permanent structure as opposed to the movable structure. And I understand when you're getting that it would take longer to build. But I just would like to really have that under consideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. So that whole question of swing versus fixed on the Bass River, the Hall-Whitaker, we've raised that and we continue to raise it. And the reality is we hope that when this bridge, when the final permanent replacement bridge for the Hall-Whitaker is built, that it's going to be good for another 75 to 100 years. And so getting it right now certainly matters. And so appreciate the conversation and the thinking there. I'm going to call you folks up now. I just want to give you two thoughts. One, your local elected officials want to follow up on this meeting with you. We're going to put out a notice that Tuesday, November 1st, we're going to gather again at Ayers Royal Side School. I think it's available. We'll double check its availability that evening. So Representative, Councilor, Senator, and I want to have a follow-on with the neighbors at that time. So we'll send out more information. Also, second, we know that there was a lot of frustration with the road work this weekend. Really? Yeah. So we initially were told that they couldn't work nights, but they could work on the weekend.
What? And we hire someone else. Yeah.
So I'm in mid-sentence. I'm ready to keep talking. So we met with the paver today, and they're going to come in and do night paving this coming weekend. Now, it's weather dependent, but what you can plan for, as long as the weather doesn't knock it out, is that they're going to set up at 5 o'clock Sunday afternoon and work through the night. We're letting them start a bit early because we want to make sure that they're out before the Monday morning school and work traffic. Okay. So yeah, no. Listen, I wish it hadn't happened like that Saturday. I apologize. Councilor Rotundo was fantastic in both listening to you and coming and talking with our engineering team and with me during the weekend. So we sorted it today. All right. So hopefully that works a whole lot better. I will say that. If you find yourselves coming in off the highway after they start to work, late Sunday afternoon, early Sunday evening, there'll be a lane coming through. If you need to get to the highway Saturday night, you're going to be rerouted along McKay over by Henry's to 1A. So just plan for that. We'll put those details in posting that we put out this week. Again, got to watch the weather as we get closer to Sunday night and make sure that it's all going to work. If for some reason the weather knocks it out, we'll probably push it back 1 week to the following Sunday. Okay. So now with that said, if you would, when you get up, there are microphones here and here. We don't need a long line, but maybe a couple few at a time come forward. If you would please tell us your name and your address, and then whether it's a thought you want to share and/or a question, please do.
So
yes, I'm sorry.
I would want to emphasize if you guys could spell your last name, because we do have a stenographer, so we can get an accurate account of tonight's meeting. So if you could spell your last name, if you don't mind, then we can make sure that we get a response to you appropriately.
So, thanks, Carrie. We'll start over here. Yes.
I'm Jen Campbell, Gambill. I live over on Folger Ave, and I actually have a question first. With this temporary work on Fernwood, I'm assuming there will be a closure while they're working?
Right now, we're trying to do as much as we can at nighttime for closures, but we're going to see if we have to do any daytime closures. We'll make sure to let people know.
The concerns that we have as residents is there's a total lack of accessibility for emergency vehicles. And admittedly, in your slideshow, you said the Fernwood Bridge cannot support vehicles of that weight. So we are now stuck with 5 to 10 minute response times. Seconds are someone's life. This 2026 is unacceptable. You have had 20 years since the last time you said this bridge needed work to start looking at like that's what I'm hearing. Everything in here said projected, proposed, preliminary, which basically means you have nothing done. When I go to work every day, I'm a teacher, I have to walk in that room with my plan ready to go. And if I look at those students and say, well, it's going to be 4 years before you learn to read, sorry, I'm fired. And I don't have lives at risk. You have lives literally in your hands right now, and your answer is, well, we're thinking about it.
So to emphasize on that, we actually had both bridges programmed in 27 to advertise. We can't necessarily control the deterioration rate of a bridge that forced the closure.
What you can control is that every single time you've inspected that bridge, we've seen the reports, and they had concerns. So
Correct.
you could control the fact that you have totally neglected the city of Beverly. We are paying city and state taxes, real big ones. I pay them on time every quarter. And you totally ignore my need for myself and my family to navigate my town. I can't go downtown Cottage Street. I know people whose businesses are going under right now. And the only answer we get is, well, it was COVID. No, it wasn't COVID. It was 20 plus years of that bridge deteriorating that you ignored. And I don't mean you in general, but your organization ignored. And this is unacceptable. And for you to sit with a straight face and tell me 2035, are you kidding me right now? It's embarrassing, and I'm sorry, and I don't mean it against you personally. I'm sure you're wonderful people, but you should be humiliated right now. I saw those traffic numbers, plus 200 plus vehicles. These are residential streets. Our children are playing and riding their bicycles. People are flying down these streets. They're running stop signs. They're in the middle of the road. They're running red lights. They have no concern whatsoever for any of the people that live here. And your answer was, well, we want it to be able to open. It's a dead-end waterway. You know who pays more money in taxes than Bass River? Us.
Do you live in that neighborhood?
We do.
So like I said, we're okay, so I want to make sure you guys all get a chance, so I just want to let this woman, so I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your comments, and like I said, we want to understand if you guys want a permanent fixed bridge. That's why we're here. Just so you guys understand, that's why we're here, to hear these comments. So that's what we're here. Just come up, just come up.
It's not so much that we want this permanent fixed bridge. What we want is something that is even a little realistic. This is an unrealistic timeline. We are working people. We don't sit home all day with our feet up and watch the world go by. We have to get out into the world. And the last time MassDOT tried to help us, we had that mess up at 128 that now has 62 backed up for 6 lane change. And they can't get there. And neither can I. And now you're telling me I'm taking Kerwood Bridge, and you honestly said you really have no faith in it. So really, it's not safe either, but it's okay for us to go on it. But if one of my parents has a medical emergency, they're probably going to die because an ambulance isn't getting there anytime in any reasonable fashion. And if that was your parents, how would you feel?
So I would say that's why we were recommending the fastest one. I know it's not as fast as you want, and we were showing you a scenario that you guys are not happy with. There's nothing we could say to make you happy with it.
One is temporary, and it's over a year to put it in.
Can we not
Correct.
get taxes and put it in?
Correct. I just want you guys to each have a chance on there, so I just want to have you guys come up and have a chance, so I'm sure we'll get to everybody, but we are trying to tighten the schedule. We wanted to come here and present you the schedule because we want you guys to have the chance to all have input. This is not necessarily exactly what is going to occur, but again, this is part of our process, is to come and reach out to you guys because we don't want the community to feel like we are not listening to them. I know you're all frustrated, but that's why we're here. I'm just saying, it's like that's why I don't live in the neighborhood, so I can understand that that's frustrating as well. I've lived in neighborhoods where bridges have closed, so in that way I can relate. What I'm trying to tell you is we're here right now to hear your input. If you guys have questions that we can answer, we want to provide you answers, and we want to keep continuing to follow up with you. We're going to take this feedback And that's part of why we're here. We're soliciting your input so we can take this feedback, and if we have to redesign it, we have to redesign it. We're working closely with the mayor's office, and we're going to try and continue to tighten the schedule, but we didn't want to wait longer to not speak to you. That's why we're here today. We didn't want to wait longer to not give you guys an option to comment on this. So just so you guys understand, that is part of why we're here. So, because I heard you were all frustrated, you didn't know what was happening. So that's why we're here as well. Okay? So I just want to give the next person an opportunity to answer, and just if you have questions and you want to follow up, also know that we can answer questions one-on-one if you guys need that too. So please keep going.
Thank you, Kerry. Let's alternate here.
Hi, my name is Rich Sad, 57 Sign Road, Dublin, Mass. There's some questions about the timeline for approvals. I noticed that you, in other words, you have people work overnight for paving, that sort of thing. I want to know how many hours people work for state. They put overtime, they put more resources towards the approvals on the federal level, the state level, and local level. People work 16-hour days. And really, I put overtime in, and then the next step is put more resources towards the design process, the federal approval process, how that process.
So we can definitely add more time into it. So what we're stuck with is in some of these cases they have set timelines that we can work with our legislature on, and I think that's where the mayor's office and some of your other elected officials can assist with. But these federal, some of these federal permits have set timelines, and so I think that's what that one slide they were showing kind of gave the overall timeline. One of them was us, which was Mass DEP, which we can accelerate. The other two were federal permits, which we can work with the legislature on trying to accelerate. I believe that's what's up there. So as you can see, the one that's the U.S. Army Corps, that's not the state, and neither is the Coast Guard one, but we can try and work with them to see if there's ways we can speed the review, but there is some set requirements. Yep.
So we'll go here next. I just want to say that that's part of what we're all, as your elected officials, trying to sort through. We figure wherever there's a timeline I mean, some of them, as Carrie said, there's a statutory requirement of so many days for certain stuff, so many weeks. But wherever we can shorten, we want to. We feel like it kind of needs all of us to just kind of project manage for as long as it takes. So that's one of the things we keep working at. Whoever wins the governor's race, governor and lieutenant governor, will know the second Tuesday in November. We'll be with them the next day, and we're going to try to get them over here to walk the neighborhood and walk the site so they can understand it, so they can start to help move things with us. So, these are the things that we're talking about each day. Let's go to you, sorry.
My name is Michael Barone. I'm B as in boy, A-R-O-N-E. I'm at 28 Cat Avenue. My question is not so much for the DOT, but for our cadre of elected officials. I do note that with the exception of our councilmen, all of you have been elected for multiple terms, more than 6 years in many cases. And my question is, if we knew the bridge was slated for 2027 repairs and or replacement, but we're 5 years before that, why weren't the designs and all the permits started ahead of time? What steps were taken by our elected officials who have been in office for multiple terms, knowing that this bridge and the Kernwood were compromised?
Thank you. I can tell you what I know, and that's that the city, in the person of Mayor Scanlon and now me, and really most specifically at Running Point, Commissioner Collins, Mike Collins, our TPS commissioner, has been pushing this bridge replacement for about a dozen years. As I understand, looking back at the timelines, MassDOT agreed to program the two bridge projects. They've looked at them together all along, Kernwood and Hall-Whitaker, in 2016. I will say, and you folks can help me out with this, until the federal infrastructure law passed last year and a funding source showed itself, right? If you remember, right after that passage, Governor Baker held a press conference in Lowell at the site of a temporary bridge that was pretty old, right? And there was a list they presented then of 63 bridges that are going to be replaced. Kernwood and Hall-Whitaker are two of those bridges. The team at MassDOT can tell you about it, but my sense is, there's a need. The need's great. identifying the funding source for any given bridge or any given set of bridges has been hard to come by. And they saw that funding source and they identified that these bridges were going to get done. I called Paul the next day, district director, and said, great, we've been pushing it. We know that our Bridge Street Road project is supposed to go out to bid next year and start in 2023. Can we bring the bridge in with it? And it's that we had some conversation then, back in November, December, about the fact that, well, that would just slow the road project down, and you can see from the timeline. So, and I also understood at that point they were looking again at doing Kernwood first, Hall-Whitaker second. That was all before they determined that Hall-Whitaker had to close, right? So that's where we are today.
So I do want to emphasize that our VHB had been designing Kernwood already. That was already under design. They were already on call also for Hall-Whitaker prior to the closure. They were designing them both with the assumption they would both be able to stay open and be used as each other's detour routes. Obviously, our design had to kind of change with this closure. So you are correct, Mayor, in saying that Kernwood was considered the priority prior to this closure. And then the feedback we had received from the mayor's office is that they would rather have Bridge Street be the priority at this time. So they had been working fully on the Kernwood design, had been moving forward with it, and then they had to switch over to Bridge Street to prioritize that one over Kernwood at this time. And I don't know if VHB, if you want to talk to that, Nick. Just
sure. Nick Shannon with VHB. So we were advancing Kernwood and Bridge Street simultaneously. We have a joint contract with the state. So we were working on those designs for the permanent replacement. In June, we all switched gears to address the Bridge Street closure, and then started looking at potential temporary, more immediate solutions for Bridge Street, all the while still advancing Kernwood and Bridge Street in the background for the permanent replacements. Now it became one more kind of, I won't say it's another bridge, but it's another piece of the original contract that we had been working on with the state. We had gone through the preliminary design process, the traffic studies, survey coordination, utility coordination with the district. Alternatives analysis was complete. Bridge condition assessments, navigation studies, and reports. All of that was complete. Things that were in progress when Bridge Street closed, bridge type selection worksheets, bridge span configurations, highway profiles, subsurface investigations, additional third-party utility coordination, and coordination with the city. Because of that, we were able to react quickly to the closure and immediately begin coordinating with the state, with the district, and with the mayor's office.
Yeah, and again, to just build off of that, the assumption had been that they would both be able to stay open, and that we would be able to start the work in '27. Obviously, we all know that's not true. I think Kernwood was already programmed, and I believe that we added in Hall-Whitaker with the additional funding we received, but we had Kernwood with Next Gen Bridge, which was another funding source in our bond bill.
If I could just trouble you for one more question. I have a difficult time understanding that the funding wasn't there when we are the funding. And the issue here is we are now prioritizing the beautification of a road that half the town can't use in preference of a new bridge that is dearly needed for commuters, for people to access the downtown, and to alleviate the pressure. I feel awful for anybody who lives between Bridge and Elliott Street right now, because that is a nightmare. And I just think it's unreasonable to say that we needed a $1 trillion federal bill for a bridge that we've known for over 12 years needs fixing.
And one day to get ready for it.
So, not our bridge, the state's, there are over 640 structurally deficient bridges in the state.
But it is your bridge.
It is your bridge.
Well,
So then our elected officials just skip right over negligence and malfeasance, you're telling me.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
I'm making the point that you guys have not championed hard enough to the state for over a dozen years. Yeah, we have I'll cede the rest of my time, but I do want to say thank you to the members of the DOT and our elected officials.
So I do want to also say that you characterized the Bridge Street reconstruction project as cost of beautification. This is this is a separate pot of money. It's a reconstruction of a road that badly needs it. It's going to involve significant upgrades to stormwater management. I mean, anybody who lives along in the neighborhoods and travels Bridge Street would probably agree that it needs to be reconstructed. Look, this project has to happen. These two bridges, however this all happens, it has to happen. We have advocated for it. I'm just telling you, the needs are incredibly great throughout the state. We have been advocating. Here we are.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Harry Pratt, 40 Walcott Road, Beverly. I'm also a director on the Board of Governors for the Bass Haven Yacht Club. And thank you for this opportunity to speak and listen and learn. And I want to remind you that Bass River and the Bass Haven Yacht Club is the only safe harbor in this area. And my question is, if you construct a permanent bridge, how much will you raise that bridge if you are not going to open it, if it's going to be a permanent structure?
So right now, we haven't vetted the permanent fixed structure because that's a comment that was brought up this evening from the individuals here. We've only been looking at a temporary structure that would be in permanent, and then the movable would be the permanent structure. That's what's been originally designed. The final elevation, I think, is maybe how much higher right now?
So we're limited by the approach roadways on both sides. We have right away. We have residential houses. So in order to achieve the height necessary for the Bass Haven clientele, we can confidently say that it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to meet with a permanent fixed solution. And for that reason, we're developing a permanent movable solution at this time.
Right. And so the idea would be for both Kernwood and for Bridge Street to be movable. We've heard your feedback, so we can look at other option, and we would be speaking with the yacht club if other options came up. In both cases, we're looking to raise the bridges enough that they would not have to open as often. And the reason for that is it's less of an impact to people driving over them, as well as it's less of a chance that there could be an issue when they're opening or closing. So that's what we're looking at, and we can work to get you the elevations and the permanent. Right now there is no permanent fixed planned, but we're going to review this when we go back because of the feedback we heard tonight, and we could reach out to you again once we have that elevation.
And Todd mentioned that there were only 21 openings last year. The reason there are only 21 openings is because as a club, we realized that it can be an inconvenience for our neighbors. Therefore, we wait, we plan, we schedule, we open the bridge, and we have over 200 members, and we all get in line, get organized, and open that bridge as little as possible. And we can understand, Mr. Mayor and everybody else, how long these permit and other processes take. We've been trying to dredge the Bass River for many years, over 20 that I know of, and working with the Army Corps of Engineers, the United States Coast Guard, and Mass DEP, and everybody else. We understand it's time-consuming and environmentally, to do it correct, it does take time. I'm not saying it should take long, but it does, and I think that the Bass Haven Yacht Club may be able to help you because we've already done a lot of that testing, as the city knows, so if there's anything that we can do, certainly contact us. And one of the questions I have, if it's not a swing bridge, that means all of our sailboats go away. They can never come back. The power boat can get in and out not at low tide because we weren't allowed to dredge, and not at high tide if there's a fixed bridge because there's not enough height. So my question is, are you going to help us to provide alternative slips? We have plenty of docks and slips on the other side of the bridge, or allow us to move our moorings onto the other side of the bridge, and what other accommodations you could provide for our members, because as you know, we work well with the city and we're certainly willing to help any way we can to help the neighbors and alleviate a lot of that traffic.
Okay, so on that, yeah, our right-of-way bureau would be reaching out to you if that's the design we go with, because we were just here tonight to present the options. We hadn't reached out to everyone on it. I apologize. Because tonight we were just at the time where we were trying to get input from everybody. We have not reached out to any abutters that could get affected by this work, but our right-of-way bureau would be coordinating with anyone, and there would have to be some sort of negotiation that would go on with you, as well as working with the city's office for moorings and any of the other process they have.
It was great. Thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm James. I'm up at 13 Mason Street, last name Bailey, B-A-I-L-E-Y. My question for the group here is, depending on what solution you choose, how do you plan to shepherd the whole bridge project to completion in 2035 if you may not be in office anymore by that point?
So it's for us. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Look, I mean, this, you know, as you well know, your elected officials are elected for a specific period of time and have to, you know, prove ourselves. So all we can do is do our best job each day, and we're here trying to do that. You know, to the extent any one of us might leave office and someone take our place, there'd be, you know, you'd like to think, and we all would try to hand off, you know, pending work to the next person who can pick it up. And I would imagine that, you know, the teams at BHP and Mascot are similarly professional and we try to do the same. You know, I mean, look, none of us are promised tomorrow, right? And so this team, I'm looking at representative and councilor and senator, and, you know, and our federal delegation are part of the team too. You know, we're trying to work it each day. We're on the phone or in each other's presence almost daily. We're in contact with Mascot and have been since, you know, since they notified us of the need for the closure of the Hall-Whitaker every 2-3 days a week. So, yeah, I mean, we're all committed to this both now and over many years, right? Hopefully fewer than you're seeing, right? But that's why we're here.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Doucette. I live on Shortell Ave in Beverly, and yeah, it is a lot more to drive around out here. All the businesses on Quick Street are losing their ass. And he's right, the last guy, Harry. He's right. The settlements have already been done on the river, and that was a lot of time. That would help them. It was just done. You know, they know where the bedrock is and everything. So that could be helpful. And you're going to have to really watch out for the Army Corps of Engineers. They shot down our dredge. Right. Said they couldn't get rid of the mud. They didn't want us to break the mud. And of course, National Grid, they have a PVC, you know what I'm talking about, the dump they have in the middle of the river you can't break. There's a lot of businesses on the river, and it's not just the sailboats, power boats, anything over 13.5 feet, even at low tide, cannot get out on that bridge. They pay a lot of taxes and registration, and it is a storm mode. And by law, I think you have to bring the height of the bridge up no matter what it is anyways, because of rising tides and all that sort of thing. I can't talk enough for the people that are getting hit by the extra traffic. I see it. I drive extra to get around back to the boatyard, and I got people on my ass the whole time. And it's bad. I mean, it's bad. I stop at the stop sign down by the school going by Kerwin. I got people swearing at me. So they're right. That's not bullshit. It's very bad. It's very dangerous. I see kids, you know, all trying to head to the skate park. They go down Bridge Street. People are cutting, you know, it's real ignorant because they're all in a big hurry. You know, they leave the same time for work, and it's just not working anymore. I worked for GE and Lynn a long time. You know their temporary bridge on Western Ave, how that worked out. Is that even down yet? I know it's been about 30 years, right?
No.
Yeah, so, I mean, and we have a member, Scott Houseman, with a sailboat. He can't get out with his mast up. So there's one of you guys, you know. So they should all see it. And somebody on this whole panel should take a ride in a boat, go on to Kernwood, and look the way you guys have been scammed for all these years. They hired a company to go in there and wrap the rotted poles with fiberglass and pour resin into it, and you can still see it. And that's why nobody could tell how bad the poles were. But now the resin's gone out, and, you know, we all been talking about it. We pass through there, you know, every single day, underneath with a small boat to get out to the mooring field. We've already lost a lot of members at the boat club. They're quitting and going to other boat yards because they're looking ahead to you're going to block them off. Problem with going to another boat yard for a bunch of guys like me that, you know, just blue collar, is that most boat yards won't let you do your own work on your boat. So you could say, oh, well, push them into going to another boat yard. It doesn't work. You might as well just take the freaking boats away. Because we can't afford to go to a place like Davenport or any, you know, Jubilee where you can't touch your own boat. It would quadruple the cost for us. So you need to make amends for whatever that's going to cost us. If you're going to pay to put us in another boat yard, it's going to cost a lot. We can't paint the bottom of our boats. We can't do anything. Check that out. That's just the way it is. And, you know, and I really think that looking into the soundings that was just done, that took a long time. As a guy with, you know, just, you know, bridging the whole river, that's already done. That helps it all. And an Army Corps of Engineers, you see what happened. What's the city getting sued for $500,000 over that deal? I think
it's all wrapped up, but he's referring to when the Army Corps awarded the city the disposal permit and then at the last minute pulled it back.
Yeah.
That was.
I mean, that was on the Corps of Engineers.
It was a hard situation. Yeah.
We felt that National Grid dropped the dime on us. I mean, we were all ready to go. We had everything ready to go. We pulled all our moorings, did a lot of work. We had guys out there in the winter pulling moorings to clear the river. And then that happened. Burnham, he was all set up. He was into it almost half an hour.
He was working,
yeah, I mean, it was a bad deal. I know that wasn't on the city, but going ahead to the bridge, where do you try to break mud there? You know, they have all power, obviously. So, you know, hopefully that helps you.
If you two gentlemen, if one of you could give us your contact information, because that information that you just mentioned could be useful for our team, so I would appreciate that.
You know, with Harry, he's going to be our next farmer anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Nancy. I am a 25-year resident of Rhineside. Several questions have come up. So one, is the Route 62, are you saying that's going to be paved in one night?
Yeah, so, yes, from McPherson, okay, from McPherson Drive to the upper end of Green Street.
Okay.
Right, to the entry to Green.
So
That's
this Sunday
right.
or next Sunday, that week, Monday morning, we will wake up, and it'll be paved.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. Number two, are you still going forward with the Bridge Street reconstruction in the midst of all this bridge stuff? Or are you going to delay that until we settle the bridge?
No, that's moving forward.
Okay.
Why would it not? Please enlighten me. The road needs to be
The
reconstructed.
fact that I need to enlighten you as to the answer of that question tells me that you are not concerned at all with at least the Ryle side part of Beverly. That the disruption of Bridge Street is going to be an absolute nightmare for us, as we already deal with the absolute nightmare of the million-year closing of the bridge, the Whitaker Bridge, and have to route around 62, can't get downtown easily. It's been a nightmare. And so now on top of that, you want to now dig up Bridge Street and make it even harder for us to get around our little Ryle side area. I'm just throwing that out there. I just think that it should be put off as you work your butt off. This should be your priority, not, you know, a Schubert statue at Lynch Park. Your priority, okay, as cute as he was, we all loved it. I get it. But that should be your priority, is upping the timeline with the state, getting that bridge fixed, and then you can do the Bridge Street reconstruction, because at least we can hobble over like we're hobbling over 62 and get over the bridge. My question to the state, and it's already been said many times, but I feel it's important enough to say yet again, this bridge has been discussed, as I said, 25 years in Ryleside, and I know there's people here that have lived there a lot longer. Why on earth you were able to close this bridge in the blink of an eye with no notice to us whatsoever after you've been talking about the deterioration of this bridge for almost as long as my children have been alive. And now you're saying 2024 for a temporary bridge? I mean, I'm sorry. I know Massachusetts is a big state and you got a lot of projects, but this isn't the first bridge you've rebuilt. The bridge is about the length of this auditorium. It's really not that complicated, and you should be able to up the timeline. I just don't get it, and I don't think anyone gets it, and I really haven't heard a good answer to that question. Thank you for your time.
Just stay up so I can ask you a follow-up, just so I make sure. Are you concerned about when we start, or when are you concerned about the finish? Like, that's what I just want to clarify.
I'm concerned about the entire process.
Okay.
It's been closed for, I've lost track, but all summer.
Yep.
And now you're saying 2024. We are still in October of 2022. So 3 more months, 12 months of 2023, and then God only knows how far into 2024 you're talking. So you're talking a really long time to start. You're not even telling us that it's going to be completed. That's bad enough. But to start in 2024, I'm sorry, but I know meetings, political bureaucracy, all this garbage that takes place, I get it, in government and permits and all this other stuff, but you work for the people. You work for the people, and you need to do a better job at getting this bridge done, period.
Okay, Nancy, I apologize for asking you to enlighten me. That was a bit defensive. My apologies. And thanks for your thoughts. Yeah?
Hi, I'm Catherine Duell. I live at Walcott Road. My question's pretty similar to Nancy's. I just want to understand, again, how it's going to take till 2026 to get the Hall-Whitaker, the Bridge Street Bridge, into a shape that we can go across it. And I think the frustration, part of the frustration we have is that is going to take 4 years, then it's going to be open for a while, then, this proposal that you have here, then it's going to close again for 4 years again for a permanent bridge. So can we get either repairs? I know you said that's not repairable, but is there any scenario where you can repair the Hall-Whitaker Bridge to open it while you're designing even the temporary bridge? Like, just get us across that bridge quicker than 2026.
So like I said, we can look at tightening the 2024 one. The other issue that you guys do not want to hear is that you have spawning fish in your river, which is what has made the construction take longer. I know that is not what anyone wants to hear. I know the fish aren't paying taxes. I understand this entirely. This is a constraint that we are put into, but we can work closely with the environmental departments to see if we can accelerate it. But that is what's taking the longer construction period, is unfortunately there are fish on both rivers, and we have a limited work period that we have been given by our environmental agencies. We can work closely with them to shorten the construction period where we can, but that's where you're getting the longer construction period. We've already mentioned that we're happy to work with the mayor's office on trying to tighten up those legislative requirements. Some are statutory, as was mentioned. and we have very limited room in that. It's not the design that is taking the time frame. I know you guys are frustrated with that, but it's primarily the right-of-way process and the environmental process that is taking it. We are doing the design concurrently with those two processes, and that's what's taking longer. We will do all we can to tighten it further, and we will keep updating you guys as we tighten it further. But right now, what we wanted to show you was these are the constraints we ran into. Again, we're here to hear what you're saying. Something that we didn't mention that we had been asked to look into further would be is if we can align the permanent structure next to the temporary structure so that the temporary structure could partially stay in place, and we're vetting that as an option so that there would not be another full closure. But it may be a limited structure that would be in place.
Is it beyond repair? I mean, you know, you're talking about the Kernwood, but the Hall-Whitaker is beyond repair.
It is beyond repair, and the reason why is, can you hear it now? Sorry. It is beyond repair. We did have our state bridge engineer and a preservation engineer, and that's the difference between when you do a bridge inspection versus a bridge rating. We did the bridge inspection. A bridge rating is to go and, you know, the posted signs, they go and they do a full structural analysis of the beams based on the bridge inspection. When we did the bridge rating, which is like a 12,000 page, it's like a huge report that they do. That's when they realized they had to close. The reason it was done so quickly is because we were concerned for everyone's safety as soon as we realized the extent of it. We did not know until we received the bridge rating report the extent of it. Unfortunately, as the mayor mentioned, we do have a lot of bridges that are structurally deficient, which is not a conversation I like to have, but they're left open because they're not considered unsafe. Once they're considered unsafe, we close them immediately. That is what occurred with your bridge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
Yes, thank you. My name is John Hayes. I live at 21 Fairmont Street in Salem, just across the Kernwood Bridge. I'm also the dredge chairman for the Bass Haven Yacht Club. And when it comes to fish, we've already done that study. So you shouldn't be able to, all you have to do is take that study off the shelf, use that study on the fish to get your fish thing out of the way. That we have already been proved.
Bring the seal
You
back.
didn't
We've
find
already
fish?
been proved the dredge.
Did you
so
not
the fish
find-
study's been done.
No, it's not the study. It's that they found fish, and they won't let us do work when there's fish.
We know there's fish in the river. But anyway, I've got about 60 years of experience in construction. I graduated from Wentworth Institute back in the 60s. I spent 2 years in the Navy Seabees. CB stands for Construction Battalion, working throughout the world. I've worked for any type of construction you can think of. We learned early on my life to think out of the box. I don't see you people thinking out of the box at all. Let's talk about the Hall-Whitaker Bridge. That thing's been dilapidated as long as I can remember, and I've been going underneath it for about 40 years. You've spent a lot of time and money on it. I could have a contractor there tomorrow morning taking that thing apart. You could take it apart in a jig time, and at the same time do some planning to come up with a new design. Part of your design is already done. You've got my son worked on the Rock Island Bridge up in the Merrimack River. They replaced that bridge. That bridge had a turntable on it.
Oh, the Heinz Bridge, is that what you're referring to?
Rocks
Village. Oh,
correct.
Rocks Village, okay.
They took and they rebuilt that turntable, and they rebuilt the piers on either side, and they did it in less than 2 years. They also put in a new type of deck, roadway, that withstands winter traffic, winter freeze thaw. There's a lot of design work in that particular job that you could pull right off the shelf and use. Another bridge that you could take a look at, we've got a bridge down in Plum Island that was replaced about 40 years ago. But that's a quick draw bridge. It goes up like that. You got that design. All you have to do is find out what kind of footing you need for it. Pull that design off the shelf and use it. I do like your idea about building the road over towards Federal Street, the new bridge there. Great idea. But in the meantime, you got to spend some money on the existing bridge. If you really did a good job, instead of a temporary one, do a permanent one. You've got all kinds of politicians that are on your side. They're all Democrats. And they'll give you, I mean, you get these Democrats all together in one room and say, we want you to give us permission to go ahead with this and get around all these permit problems, because you're talking about the same footprint if you replace the bridge the way it is right now. If you start going over here to Federal Street, I think it's a great idea, but I don't think you have time for that, because a safety problem. Where's your closest fire station to the people on Bridge Street? I mean, the fire engine from Salem isn't going to come across that bridge if it doesn't have to.
They weren't allowed to prior to this.
Okay, so, you know, you've got a fire engine problem, you got an ambulance problem, you got a police problem. If you had put a fire station, if the great city of Beverly put a fire station at Cummings Center like they talked about a number of years ago, that problem would have been solved. But you didn't. The Bass Haven Yacht Club, they probably got about 40 sailboats. Would that be about right? And there are some other people. The Plum Island Bridge is elevated. Okay, so most of the boats can get underneath it. And the quick draw is really quick. You put the gate down, you open the bridge, the boat goes through, you put it down, it takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Kernwood Bridge, but seriously, you've got to tighten up on this whole schedule. It's just absolutely ridiculous the way you're pulling it. It's almost like you can't walk and talk at the same time. Pull it together. Pull it together. If the state...
Sir, if I could just ask you to conclude with your next thought.
When I'm done.
Yep.
When I'm done.
Well, sir, you're making some great points. We just want to get to the other folks.
I'm not done with the current.
Okay.
If you had hired an engineering firm or a design construct company like Shembro, look at what he did for the Beverly Salem Bridge, the Veterans Memorial Bridge now. That only took 40 years to get built. Now, who remembers the fire that they had on the railroad bridge? Who remembers that? 2 years they got it rebuilt. 2 years. Now, how did they do that? They had political pull. Some of you people, where's our congressman? We got a state rep here. Where's our state senator? I know. We've got U.S. senators. They're both Democrats. They could walk into Biden's office right now, put a piece of paper on it, and he'd sign it. Probably doesn't know what he's signing, but he'd sign it. Kernwood Bridge. I don't know what your plan is for the Kernwood Bridge. The state engineer didn't really speak about that. But are they going to replace that in kind, the same footprint? Or are they going to offset it to one side or the other?
It was going to be in place but higher, so that it wouldn't have to open as often.
It's going to be just higher.
That's the current design right now.
Well,
And movable as well.
Once you get something open on the Bass River, you can take that thing down and build a new one.
Okay.
Now,
I mean, that's our hope. We want to build the Bridge Street and then build Kerwin. You're right. Yep.
One thing that your state maintenance people are not doing, they're not paying attention to the road surface on the Kernwood Bridge. It's full of potholes, and every time a 10-ton truck goes across that vibration goes right down through the whole structure. And one of these days, a 10-ton truck's going to go through it. The State Department maintenance people got to get out there and fix that surface. Got 100 potholes across it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, over here.
Hi, my name is, which one of these things works? My name is Chris Benjamin. I live off of East Garfield in Royalside. I had two questions. One was, how about now?
There you go, Chris.
Okay. Always people, okay. The heavy metals in the Bass River shut down the project a couple years ago. Is that a risk factor for your design?
Sir, can you just repeat your name because the stenographer couldn't get it when you were away from the microphone?
Chris.
Thank you.
Benjamin.
Thank you.
So are heavy metals a problem for the design?
Yeah, you're referring back to the proposed dredging. So
you started to do it, the project ground to a halt by somebody else.
Right, so just to kind of refresh everybody, the city secured an approval from the Army Corps of Engineers to dispose of the sediment that's currently in the channel of the Bass River, and relying on that approval, that permit approval, the city then sought state grant funding. We got the state grant funding, went out to bid for a dredge company to come in and dredge. Dredge company came to the Bass River. When they reached out to the Army Corps for the coordinates of where they were supposed to dump the sediment, the Army Corps said, well, they didn't reply to him for a week. And then when the calls started coming to me and from me to them, they said, well, wait, sorry. One of our analysts, when the call came in for the coordinates, looked at the permit and looked at the data that had accompanied the permit application and said, who approved this permit? It never should have been approved. The sediments that are currently inert, right, in the floor of the Bass River in the channel are not clean enough to dispose of in an open ocean dump site. That's what happened with the Bass River dredging. So Chris's question is, do we need to be concerned because of that with, the current footings and where footings might go, I think is that the question, Chris?
That's the question. I mean, if you disturb the sediment in the Bass River in order to construct either a temporary or a permanent bridge, then the Army Corps of Engineers is going to get involved. Based on their history, the heavy metals are going to be a stopping point. It'll be a risk factor, and the whole thing will grind to a halt, no matter what plan you have.
Absolutely. So just regarding the dredging, it is a requirement. It would be part of the Army Corps permit process. It could necessitate additional time or additional approvals that are required that would take place during construction for soil disposal. As you mentioned, new installation of piles will disturb that. Tying it back in, any sediment disposal is also related to time of year restrictions, of which on the Hall-Whitaker bridge site, we're limited to July and August for sediment disturbing operations, which are pile installations. So that's all part of the Army Corps and the Coast Guard permit process that will be required to go through.
So is it possible they'll simply block the entire project?
No, so what's different about ours is we're not proposing to put any of the material back into the ocean as you guys were proposing. So our material would have to be brought off site. So I think that's why it would be a different process versus you guys were proposing to put it back into the water.
So you're going to put it someplace else?
Correct.
Oh,
we have to do this on any project that has hazardous material. We have to test it, we have to treat it, and we have to find an appropriate location where it can go.
And that's built into your timeline?
Currently, it is built into the design and as well as the construction, which is part of where you're getting the durations, yes.
Gotcha. One question, and that is the infrastructure under the current bridge adequate to support another bridge?
unfortunately, the substructure is in poor condition as well, and it can't be relied on to support the temporary or a permanent bridge, as well as the span configurations of the temporary bridge, if we would go to that route, compared to the span configurations of the existing bridge. We would propose temporary, I say temporary because we could probably pull them later, piles if we go the temporary route. There's a potential that we could do something to the existing abutments on both ends of the bridges to reuse part of it or rehabilitate it.
But then you don't have to disturb the sediment in the bottom.
Correct, and that's all part of our discussions.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Over here.
Karen Schwartz, 19 Giles Ave, SCHWARTZ. So I'm curious about the process. And Mayor, can you tell me again where the funding came from? And, you referenced the governor saying there were 62 bridges. Where is the funding coming from?
So I'm going to turn to the team here, but when these two bridges were part of the governor's plan announced late last calendar year, that was with the federal bipartisan infrastructure law funding, which if I remember reading the website right, over 5 years, 6 years, over how many years is $1.2 billion?
Yep. So we had two types of funding available. We had passed with our transportation bond bill prior to the infrastructure bill because in Massachusetts we had acknowledged our bridges were in poor shape. We had worked with the governor's office, and in the bond bill he had put in a certain amount of money, what we called next generation bridges. Beyond that, we also received in the IJA or bill process another group of money to help our bridges. So in the next 5 years, we're going to be spending over $3 billion on our infrastructure in Massachusetts because we were able to demonstrate there was a need. So these were included in both a combination of those two funding sources.
Funding is coming in from many directions, so I understand that.
So
at what point in the process was it required to close the bridge to continue the process?
So that never changed the process. It just kind of altered the goal we were doing. So we were always working towards designing both of these bridges because they had received funding prior to any closure. Both of these bridges get bridge inspections, both underwater bridge inspections as well as above water bridge inspections continuously. I believe they're on a 1-year cycle, if not tighter. They're monitored because they are not in ideal condition, as we all know, and they are inspected. This latest inspection drew concerns from the bridge inspector. They went back and they decided that a bridge rating report needed to be done. That's beyond a bridge inspection. And once the bridge rating report was done, there was concern that it wasn't safe for a vehicle to be on the bridge. That's what triggered the closure. It didn't change whether we were going to design it. We were already starting the design process prior to the closure.
Okay. So has that report been completed for Kernwood?
We have not done a bridge rating report on Kernwood.
Why
no.
is that?
We, on our latest bridge inspection, did not decide it was necessary, but we can evaluate the need as we keep moving forward. We don't do a bridge rating on every bridge after every inspection.
Okay, so the process is the inspection triggers the rating.
An inspection triggers, correct.
What is triggered after the rating says, okay, we can close the bridge? It just seems that it's probably part of the process that you can't go to the next step until you've closed the bridge.
So I guess I'm confused on the next step.
So if you were to be working on the Kernwood at the same time, okay, so now you know the Kernwood has to happen. You have to do that too. Is closing the Kernwood part of the process? What can you do before you close a bridge? Or what can't you do before you close the bridge?
If I could try this one just from a kind of a layman's perspective, most bridges don't get closed down prior to a replacement bridge being built. This was independent, right? This was that in the inspection triggered real concerns, which led to that much deeper dive. Again, layman's terms, right? Much deeper dive of the rating process, and that led the MassDOT folks to say that it can't stay open in the meantime.
Okay, so it's likely, it's quite possible that you won't need to close the Kernwood Bridge.
Correct.
Okay.
if I can...
They are planning to build the new Kernwood Bridge in the same footprint. So when they're ready to build the new one, they're going to need to demo the existing. See what I mean?
So the plan, the original plan was to replace the Kernwood.
Yeah.
Then years back, the Hall-Whitaker became concerns with that, and through the efforts of the town in MassDOT, we recognized the need to do. We got to figure out both of these together and how best to do that. So the plan prior to the Hall-Whitaker closure was to advance the Kernwood and the Hall-Whitaker. The Kernwood was in the plan back, several years ago, and there's 2 years worth of engineering work that's been conducted over that time frame for the Kernwood. This Hall-Whitaker closure has really caused us to now reevaluate for not only for fixing the Kernwood, but looking at the Hall-Whitaker, now that it has to be closed, how do we maintain the Kernwood while we try to do both in what that best scenario would be? So just to touch on the inspections, we routinely inspect every bridge every 2 years. If everything's fine with the bridge, every 2 years they're inspected. Once there is inspections that note certain deterioration, levels of deterioration that are poor, we might go to an 18-month period where we inspect that bridge for every 18 months instead of 24. We call them special members. It might be structural steel, the floor beam stringers, or whatever component is in poor condition dictates the frequency of those inspections. And then when you get, so for the Kernwood, I think the inspections have been every 6 months and then the 3 months, depending on whether it's a special member or a marine for the piles. So we constantly been inspecting those bridges. The rate of deterioration is something that isn't easy to say we got another 5 years, 8 years, or 10 years. So we have been hit with this kind of curveball for the Hall-Whitaker. The inspections reports came back. It was flagged as needing a rating because similar what happened to the Kernwood. I don't have the dates or times, but when the Kernwood got to a certain condition, we did a rating and rated that for 10 tons, and that's when that weight limit came in from, was based off that rating report at the time, and I'm not that familiar with the timing of that, but that's what caused the Kernwood to be restricted for emergency vehicles. So that heightened and elevated that to the point where that was in the 2027 program, and we've been diligently working to get all the information in details, survey, borings, and plans together to be able to put ourselves in a position to apply for a lot of these permits that we know we need and we have to comply with. And there are statutory requirements in those different permits that we require from different agencies.
So did this poor rating help expedite the process? Does it have anything to do with the process that you're already in, or you just closed the bridge?
Yes, so it has, because as I mentioned before, it was on 27, and now it's earlier.
So now it bumped
So you
it
weren't
up.
going to start construction originally until 27. It was going to advertise in 27, go out in 27. So it has moved earlier because of the closure.
Have other bridges been closed? In
Yes.
Eastern Massachusetts, where?
So there was, what is the one? There's a bridge that was closed in Boston, right down in Hyde Park, if you know the area. We can get a list. It was closed. It's over the train tracks, and so people aren't able to get to both sides today.
So out of how many ratings, 3 bridges were closed? Out of how many?
Recently? We closed.
Since this funding came in?
Since this funding came in. I can get a number for you. I can't say offhand how many bridges we've closed since the funding came in, but there has been more than just this bridge, unfortunately.
Once we get a rating report back, there is an opportunity for us to put together a repair package that might address those deficiencies to get that so it isn't weight restricted. If that's possible, that's usually our first effort is to rehabilitate it, to take that, not to get to the point where you have to close that bridge. And that's kind of what happened with the Kernwood, years ago. And so as disappointing as the timelines are that we presented to you, those are following all the statutory requirements for all the permitting and all the design effort that needs to go to develop the permit applications, get into that permit process, and to get out with permits in hand that we know we can bid and not get shut down or closed. And so we have to come up with those really, really detailed plans to present to the agencies for them to understand that we are trying to minimize or avoid impacts to those resource areas that are protected. We have a right-of-way process. If we can't build it within our footprint of our existing right-of-way, that's a 14 to 18-month process to just secure the right-of-way that you need to do prior to advertising that project. So those timelines aren't appealing to us either, but the plan for the Kernwood was on track for 27, 28, but now with this situation, we're here tonight to listen to you, and we appreciate your feedback, and the temporary bridge on the Hall-Whitaker is to be able to open that back up sooner and maintain vehicle loading for statutory all vehicles, including emergency, while we stay on that path with the Kernwood, and then we would follow up because we have some reliability built in with the temporary bridge at the Hall-Whitaker, because we don't want to rely on the Kernwood for the next 4, 6, or 8, just like a few gentlemen from the yacht club had said tonight. They started their work and got stopped, and that's what we avoid. So it's as painful as the planning and effort that goes into the getting and securing the permits. We know we can build that. We have, that's why it takes so long to get these bridges. This, 5-year, 8-year, 10 years to design a bridge is not uncommon. In the Fox Hill Bridge is in construction now. That's been on that path for 15 to 20 years. I think the difference for this community, and sometimes it happens for other communities, things come up in the acceleration of the Hall-Whitaker has put us in a real difficult situation because we're trying to focus on the Kernwood. Now we're going to do both, but we also want to know what's better for the neighborhood here as far as being able to maintain vehicle traffic over Bridge Street, the pedestrian connections that are there now that won't be altered for years while we replace the Kernwood. I would be uncomfortable telling anyone that 10 years from now the Kernwood's going to be fine and not get a new rating and not get closed. I mean, you can't really. That's the fear that we all have as public agency responsible for the bridges. So every year, we spent $1.3 billion last year on a multitude of programs. We spend every dollar we get. We get an extra $50 million in federal funding every year for redistribution because other states can't spend their money. I can't remember the last year that we ever didn't get not only our allotment and spend it, but we also got an extra $50 million for the 15 or 20 years that I've been doing project development. So we are scratching and clawing for whatever money we get, we're spending. And there's a lot that goes into it. There really is, into getting and developing the plans to be able to go to the permit. It's like going to the planning board and just have a sketch and say, yeah, I just want to put a traffic signal here and a driveway here. You got to go back and you got to do your work. These are the most complicated and costly bridges that you're talking $100 million, $80 million. We won't know that till we get further down, but that's what we're doing. But if you don't want the temporary bridge and you want to save time and roll the dice with the Kernwood, we can't tell you what's going to happen to any of those bridges that are on it's load rated for 10 ton. We got a certain amount of time. We're going to do there's 2 repair packages that we're preparing to fortify the Kernwood in light of this situation with the Hall-Whitaker, to give us more of a level of comfort that this Kernwood is going to stay for the 8 to 10 years that we hope to get out of these repairs. So,
thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Hi, my name is Greg Nowak, Nowak. I live at 63 Livingstone Ave. Thank you guys for coming here, but my question is actually for the mayor. A gentleman earlier, Tom, brought up some issues he had driving in the neighborhood. I think a couple other people did as well with the increased traffic. And even before the closure, there's been traffic issues there. So I live right in between a three-way stop that is more of a suggestion and a traffic light that has seen numerous accidents, including my own car being rear-ended there. So, and to be as diplomatic as possible, the people who are driving around are less than kind. Could we get some increased police presence in the neighborhood, especially with what's going on?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I know that there's been a focus there, and I don't think it's ever felt to be enough. So yes, we'll, and in fact, let me just remind you folks that we do want to do this meeting on November 1st. We think there'll be some follow-up from this conversation, and we'll also be spending some time on some of the more, local concerns around, different pedestrian movements and traffic, but absolutely. Yeah.
For that meeting, could maybe the chief of police be present?
Yeah. We'll see who we can get from the department. Sergeant Henneberry's fantastic. I don't know if he was here this evening. He was here for a chunk of the meeting and listening in, and he's been very responsive. So we'll depending on their availability that given evening, we'll have representation from the department. We can talk in the meantime, please. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
You having fun? I waited in line, but my question is exactly what his was. I live on Kernwood Heights, which is the next street from Livingston.
Can you just say your name? I'm sorry.
Matt.
Thank you.
Yep. I did see a lot of concern for pedestrians and bikers over the bridge, but nothing really surrounding the area, specifically concerning the kids of heirs. My children, our street has essentially turned into a drag strip. It's very unsafe. My kids don't feel safe. And like he'd mentioned, we did have a little bit of police presence at the very beginning for a couple of days, which was great. They were diverting traffic away, allowing kids to freely walk up and down the streets. That went away. I don't know why. I just feel like I know there was traffic studies being done and whatnot, but I didn't know where that stood and, what are we looking for in this situation? Yeah. Our streets have essentially become main streets now.
Right. So I do know that the police did divert traffic at the bottom of Kernwood Heights for a couple of days, and then with the traffic counts beginning, they needed to stop doing that to see what people's own kind of left to their own devices patterns were. And that data has been collected. We haven't gotten it back. Do you folks have an update?
Hi, Christine Triarchis with VHB. Yes, Mass DOT did collect data out within a lot of the local neighborhood roadways. That data was collected about 3 weeks ago. It has been downloaded and is available. I know it has been shared with us. I believe it has been shared with the city's traffic consultant. And if not, we will certainly make sure that it has been.
Can you share it with us?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a secret, or I'm concerned?
Yes, absolutely.
So thanks for bringing it up. Let's get our hands on it. We can put it on our website easy enough and send it over.
Have that now. I'd love to hear while we're here, but
so sorry.
No, I haven't seen it. So
my hesitation was that in the form that it's very raw data.
Gotcha.
We do have some very preliminary data here. I think it was on one of the slides where we had kind of a before and after. Granted, it's just a snapshot in time. It was based on some data that was collected back in fall of 2020 and adjusted to account for the pandemic, and then compared with the data that was collected in September to kind of show in the peak period, so AM peak period around 8 a.m. and PM peak period at 5 p.m., the differentials on those roadways.
So usually what are the end results of that? Like what do you envision? What's going to happen?
So there are a few, and there was a slide on this, a few traffic initiatives that are already in place. So I will say, yes, preliminary traffic counts had been done. Preliminary traffic study was in process. Unfortunately, we were not far enough in the design process to have like a real plan of what needs to happen at every single intersection along a detour route, unfortunately, when the Hall-Whitaker had to be closed. So a few traffic initiatives that are currently in process right now. Mass DOT has granted the city a bottleneck grant. What that grant is going towards is to implement an adaptive signal system along the Route 62 corridor. It actually was already in design. prior to all of this, so that should be implemented, I believe, next year at some point.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want to confuse people. The bottleneck grant has come our way. We've started the work. I'm looking to our engineering team. It's for the McPherson light, the light at the driveway to Cummings, the McKay light, and Beckford. Okay. And the point of that, look, it's not over at Bridge Street, but what it is meant to do is help move traffic through,
Yes.
McPherson and Elliott and up and down. And it's replacing the technology that was put in place when the 62 project was done 27 years ago. So this is all, software-driven, camera-mounted technology that can read queuing and can adjust, can adjust weights and green light sequences and all to try to move traffic better and try to also coordinate with the various intersections. And that has been in process. We're not done. But we had the McPherson was the first one done, and it was done about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So MassDOT got that money out the door to us quickly. In fact, they came to us after Hall-Whitaker closed, and they said, look, we know, everybody's up against it. Here's one thing, it doesn't open the bridge, but it's one thing that can start to try to improve that traffic crush that's coming along 62.
So with these,
and as far as the data, we'll get it from MassDOT. We'll put it on the website. If you want to get it directly to an email address, we can do that.
I'm just more concerned, what can we do now to protect
Right.
the kids? I mean, instead of waiting for studies and whatnot. Why can we put a police officer back down during before and after school? Or, was that a lot to ask? I'm not really sure how this works.
Yeah, I think we can
now
talk
that the
about
study's
that.
done, and you can now.
Yeah, we
limit
can talk
traffic
about it
again.
tomorrow. If you two gentlemen want to follow up with me after the meeting.
Yeah, would love to.
And then Eric, I know you share things out through Ryleside Civic. We can try to, we can look at it together tomorrow. We try to share some more information out and see what additional makes sense. And Councilor Rotundo's, in fairness, been on this
Been phenomenal.
daily. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name's Bart Weldon. I live on Sunset Drive in Beverly, so I'm in Ryleside. I'm impacted by the bridge closure. I'm concerned about the two-bridge approach, the temp bridge and the permanent bridge to follow. So just a couple questions. What is the cost and time difference between building the temp bridge and going right into a permanent movable bridge?
You can go on. The cost. Or you want to give the
I can give the schedule.
Give the schedule.
I can give
I'll
the schedule.
give the
All right. Sounds good. All right. So schedule-wise, and I have cheat sheets here for myself because I want to make sure it's consistent. When the mayor asked that, what we told the mayor, and let me just pull that up so I can answer it. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure it's consistent with our meeting with the mayor, and we did discuss this. I just got to pull up my cheat sheets here, but essentially it's going to take a little bit longer to design because of the environmental and right-of-way processes of the permanent movable versus a temporary fixed. Additionally, permanent movable is longer to fabricate and construct as compared to the temporary. Timeline, I think we're on the order of 3 to 4 years longer in design and maybe 2030. And I'm trying to pull it up, and I apologize for the crude schedule here. But 1 second. We did look at this option. So we had construction of Bridge Street starting in 2027 rather than 2024 for the temporary. Again, this assumes a permanent Bridge Street movable on the alignment. We heard about bridge exempt earlier. The construction due to time of year restrictions and the fabrication of the movable elements and the entire structure would extend the duration of the bridge construction. We had a bridge construction period of 4 years as opposed to 2 construction seasons for the temporary bridge, putting it at sometime in 2030 for permanent Bridge Street. All the while, we're relying on existing Kernwood to open and close and maintain vehicular and navigational traffic without going out of service. That was the biggest risk on this approach.
So when could you, I mean, if you were planning to start the temp bridge in what, 24? Is that your current?
Correct.
So what's the best case that you could start the permanent movable?
Construction?
If you were to start at 24 for the temp, whatever that means to start, I mean, does that mean start actual construction?
Correct. Yep.
Because your permitting's the same regardless, right?
Permitting would not be the same for temporary versus permanent. I don't know if the slides are
I would think
available.
the temp would actually have some complications because now you got to go to the Coast Guard and say, we're going to block traffic. With a movable, you're not blocking traffic.
So I appreciate that you mentioned that. We're making an assumption that a temporary fixed
right.
is going to be permittable in our timeline. That's one of our assumptions and something that we still don't know yet.
Right.
With this approach. The temporary bridge would all be within the existing right-of-way. It would have 2 lanes in each direction, only 1 sidewalk, not 2 sidewalks, and it wouldn't have dedicated bicycle lanes. Permanent bridge will have all of that. It may or may not fall within the existing right-of-way. And we also have the temporary bridge. That's the process, okay? So the temporary bridge would also, what we're trying to do is limit utility coordination and utility conflicts, which is why it's narrower. The permanent bridge will surely have utility conflicts. We have submarine cables on both sides of the bridges. They're underwater and underground. We also have utilities overhead, and we have utilities at each approach. We have both communication, and we have communication and tel data, as well as city gas at each approach. We have city water that actually goes under Bass River. We have city fiber that goes under the river, Verizon fiber under the river. There's actually an old sewer siphon that carries a utility for the city under the river as well. So with our temporary approach, we're hoping that because of the narrower cross-section of the bridge, we can eliminate or minimize the amount of utility coordination, right-of-way coordination, and environmental permitting. The permanent, that's why the design schedule increases. Permanent bridge will just increase all of that.
Well, just maybe be flexible on that and think about a permanent movable bridge within the current right-of-way footprint. Give up a sidewalk on one side. I mean, again, keep your options open. What's going to get us up and running would be appreciated. I think this is for you, Mayor Cahill, but the suggestion to go to Federal Street, was that just so that, assuming you build a temporary bridge to Federal, then the permanent would go back in the old location, and by having the temp go to Federal, you'd be able to keep that open during construction of the new perm? Was that the only reason to go to Federal? What's the real reason to go to Federal?
Well, I know that Commissioner Collins has been talking with MassDOT for about a decade about that alignment and it being a preferable alignment for the city. From his perspective, it's an alignment that the city proposed back in the 1930s before this bridge was built. But again, Commissioner Collins has been talking this language with MassDOT for years. As we're talking about it, it would be put the temp bridge in on the existing right-of-way, build a permanent bridge over to Federal. And that's what one of the things we've asked them to look at.
Okay. Again, I would just encourage anything that just makes it straightforward. Keep those existing footprints. Anything like that would be appreciated. I think you answered this, but do you need the Coast Guard approval for the temp bridge? Because you're going to block those, so you do need that. Your permit, I mean, your timeline right there looks perfect, and that everything is stepwise. You got to complete one before you do the next. There's got to be some way to collapse that. Or which of those do you think could overlap rather than be done consecutively?
The slide that's up is the right-of-way.
So I'm going to look behind me while I'm doing this and try and also not get yelled at for not speaking into the microphone, so I apologize ahead of time. So some of the process can overlap. They showed it as a waterfall, so there can be some months of overlapping that can occur. We can look at tightening it. where I think could happen was we could start working on, preparing plans, layout plans, and takings ahead of time. But the big one we'll have to get to is approval before we can start negotiating on our right-of-way. So I think that's probably the tightest one. But that's why there is a range. If you guys see, that's why there is a 10 to 14 months, because there can be some overlap that can occur. Again, the more we can minimize the amount of right-of-way impacts, the less we affect the local abutters, and also the less amount of abutters that we're going through the process of negotiating with. But I think that the longer one is actually going to be the environmental permitting will take a little bit longer than the right-of-way.
And that's all federal level?
In many cases, yes. There is some portion at the beginning, which is DEP, which would be the Massachusetts one, and we do have a good working relationship with them. We can start prepping them for this now. That's probably where we could look to see to tighten things. Again, there are some requirements that we are not allowed to tighten at this time.
Yep. And Paracella, anything you can do to grease skids obviously is appreciated. Is the Hall-Whitaker Bridge still able to swing today?
Yes, it is still getting open for boat traffic as of now, and it's only accessible for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross over.
Just wanted to confirm that. Just one opinion, I like the idea of keeping a movable one. I'm a former member of Bass Haven. I'm not a member there now, but I do have a sailboat now. I did have a sailboat then. I've had to go through that bridge with a sailboat. It's a treat, trying to get the tide right, the power lines overhead, but it's a beautiful thing. I hope you're able to build one new bridge, a movable bridge, and somehow compress the timeline would be my preference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we got 3 folks left over here.
Hi. My name's Tim Perkins. I live at 51 Winthrop Ave. I have 2 questions, actually. So I'm curious about the alternate alignment. What exactly does that look like? Was there a picture of it before?
Yeah.
So we have one alternate alignment shown. We can be looking at some more that would be more of an offset. This is a major skew alignment that was proposed by the city quite a while ago. Our concern is this is not an easy project to permit or design. And our worry would be is there is some a lot of land taking on this and a lot of resources that would be affected, but we wanted to let you know that we had been trying to look at this option. I think this would leave the temporary structure in for longer because the amount of time it would take. The other concern we had brought up is when we go to get permits, similar to what happened to you with Army Corps, when we go to get the environmental permits, they may say the existing alignment is your best option. Do not go for this alignment at this time because of the impacts. So we just wanted to say that we are looking at this, but that is one of our concerns, that we'd have to kind of vet this through the environmental permitting to see if this is even feasible. And if they might say the original alignment is what they consider the better alternative.
If that's the case and the bridges are both on the same alignment, that means there would be 2 bridge closings, right?
Correct. We're looking at the option of maybe an offset, which wouldn't be a complete other alignment, but that's something we just started discussing, I believe, this morning as maybe an alternative, is kind of doing an offset based on the feedback we were going to get from today, which would mean that maybe there could be a way to leave some structure open, but it would be a very limited structure. We haven't really vetted that, so we're not comfortable showing it, but as we keep updating, again, we're going to have a website. We're going to continue to do outreach. It is an option that was brought to us that we can look at. It wouldn't be a full alignment change. It would be more like an offset, like the center line location could shift. Part of that would be looking at a narrower width, which was mentioned by the previous person who commented.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on the temporary approach and why are we saying temporary? As you know, we were trying to have everyone appreciate the process, I guess, is our goal for this evening, right? And why are we coming up with these durations? And we understand your feedback, we understand your frustration. The temporary option that we have put forward as the preferred option is because our number one goal is to restore traffic as quickly as possible with the least amount of obstacles possible. So that temporary approach, that narrower bridge on the existing alignment in the existing location, is what we think is the fastest way to reopen Bridge Street. Once that happens, if we can achieve that and we can achieve the reopening of Bridge Street, that gives us a good amount of time for all of these different preferred alignments for the permanent installation, both at Kernwood and at Hall-Whitaker.
Okay, thank you. My second question, or the second part of my question is, I work in Boston. My wife does also. We both walk to the commuter rail several times a week. On the weekends, we also walk over the bridge to go to downtown, to the businesses. So the pedestrian aspect is very important to us. And so and there's not really a alternative because you couldn't really walk around the whole river. So I guess, yeah, how long are we talking about it being impassable to pedestrians?
It would, so on the current approach that you've seen tonight in the slides we've put together, there is not an accommodation, and Rob, you're okay if I take this one, right? There's no accommodation for a temporary pedestrian piece during construction. What Carrie just alluded to is our team, appreciating that fact and that major assumption, which we understand can be very difficult for those who live there, and potentially looking at slightly shifting that temporary bridge alignment either south or north in order to allow that bridge to stay in service while constructing the permanent bridge. So that is something that we're aware of. That is something that there is no separate temporary pedestrian bridge, I will say, in this current program.
And I think your specific question was, once construction starts, there would be 2 construction seasons when they're building the temporary bridge that there would not currently be pedestrian access. I think that might have been what you were trying to ask. 2 construction seasons does not necessarily mean 2 years. Again, we are limited when we can do certain work, but we're trying to tighten up that construction as quickly as possible. But the construction of the temporary structure would be faster than the permanent structure. So that's why we're trying to evaluate if there's a way when we build the permanent one to leave some access open.
Mm-hmm. Well, whatever could be done to keep it open for pedestrians would be important to me anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Eric Gagnon, Ashland Street. I was curious if you can answer a question how in Florida we can watch a bridge be replaced in a matter of weeks, but it's going to take MassDOT 13 plus years.
I can't say how Florida did it, but I'm happy to reach out to the Florida DOT to see how they got around that process.
They're not the first ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that, are there emergency waivers for all these hurdles that you've been talking about?
We are exempt because we're staying in the current alignment. We are exempt from some permitting already, which we are taking advantage of. There's actually, shockingly, a lot more permits that we could have had to file. And by limiting the scope of work with this temporary bridge, we are reducing the amount of permitting, similar to what was getting referred to by Nick earlier. But we can continue to look to see which ways we can shrink it further.
Okay, so my question was, are there emergency waivers to the hurdles you were talking about?
There are not any emergency waivers for the permits that we listed today.
So there's not. So Florida managed to get federal permits in a matter of weeks.
I'm happy to reach out to them about that bridge because I don't know how they did it. I'm happy to do that.
Are you from the firm or from?
I'm from Mass DOT, so that's why I can reach out to the DOT chief engineer and see what they did. I'm happy to do that.
Are you from MassDOT?
I am. We're both
kind of
with
concerned me
MassDOT.
that you said that this rating is what threw a curveball when in 1998, this bridge was poor. And in 2016, it was serious condition. And this gave you a clue?
I mentioned it earlier, when we get those rating reports, or we have an inspection that flags it as poor, the rating report gets...
Serious. 2016, serious. Both bridges.
Right. So again,
from your
this
website.
Yep. Yeah, so the question is why, when it was poor, was it not immediately closed? Or is the question why was it not
wasn't
replaced?
this addressed and fixed, and why when it was serious?
So it is serious. There was ongoing maintenance and ongoing inspections getting done, but unfortunately, and this is not what any community wants to hear, but as the mayor mentioned, we have over 600 structurally deficient bridges in Massachusetts that are all asking the same question. So we are trying our best to get to every bridge that's in poor condition. And the only reason it was closed, because I said, is it was in poor condition, but we didn't deem it unsafe until we had looked at it
So what
further.
other structures in our city are at this very dangerous safety concern that haven't been rated because you're not touching them, that people are in danger every day going over?
The bridge inspections are available. I can have.
I know. I just told you in 2016 it was serious. You didn't do anything.
Right.
What other ones?
So I don't have the list of all the bridge structures that we own in Beverly right now in front of me, but I'm happy to get that information over to the city so they can send it along to you.
Is that a concern of yours?
It is a concern for all of the state for me. So I'm looking at the entire state of Massachusetts, and yes, it is a big concern to me that we have an aging infrastructure. I think that's why we got the bill passed, because we all acknowledged across the United States that we have an aging infrastructure. So I am concerned about it. And that's why I felt it was important that I was here today, to let you guys know that I do feel strongly that this is a concern we have. Unfortunately, we do have lots of structures that are not in great condition. It's not anything I wanted to walk into, but it is what I walked into. So we're here right now to hear your opinions, to get your feedback, and I hear your frustration. But unfortunately, there are a lot of bridge structures that we have that are getting that poor condition.
Okay, another question is MassDOT has given us a lot of wonderful intersections in the past several years that can't handle the traffic as it is. You just put a great one down at Cabot and Rantoul down at the bridge. That now you're going to tell me in the next 13 years you're going to divert all of the traffic going to and from Salem through that intersection that currently can't even handle the volume that's there now. How are you going to mitigate that?
We can look at that intersection to see if there's.
You haven't looked at it yet? You've had 4 months.
Eric, if I could, the traffic engineering firm that designed that has been back and working on that several times since it opened. There have been some challenges.
How did it pass design and go like that? Who looks at this?
I think, and I don't want to try to say too much, but I know that there have been challenges with the need to safely accommodate other modes of traffic, specifically bike traffic.
So Mayor, I don't want to interrupt. It is in our study area. So we are including that as part of our...
You just built it.
Correct, but because the volumes are changing, that's why we're going to reevaluate the intersection to
But it can't handle what it was already. This is my concern. You're building these intersections and structures that can't handle the traffic now. You say it's for 5 to 10 years projection traffic. It can't handle what it is now. Look at Henry's intersection, that intersection.
So
I can name any intersection in the city.
Right. Not every intersection, unfortunately, is designed for the max capacity. Sometimes it's for safety concerns that we emphasize replacing these intersections. Sometimes it's for pedestrians or other vehicles that are accessing it. We don't necessarily design every area for the amount of space, because it would mean that we'd be taking a tremendous amount of homes to accommodate it when it's at max capacity. Unfortunately, Massachusetts is incredibly congested. We're one of the most congested states
So we
within
should
the
probably stop
128.
some development in the city.
We're not
add
trying
more
to
congestion.
do that. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying
It sounds like that's what it should be. If the roads can't handle it and we can't change the roads to handle it, why would we add more congestion?
We're trying to work with you guys by doing this study. I know that's not what you want to hear, but there's a limit on how much we can do with the amount of vehicles that exist in all of our roadways in Massachusetts.
Exactly. Thank you.
Sir?
I think a little bit of what he said has to do towards the mayor.
Okay.
In regards to the other nightmare that Riverside is looking forward to, that development down by the river.
Yeah, let me...
That was a little bit of a dig on you for that.
No.
It's going to create way more traffic than we already have right now with the bridge closed.
Yeah, let me, oh gosh, we have more people. Okay, this meeting is going to end after these. We have 4 new people up. You can come, no, Karen, no. We can go through the next 4. To Nancy's point, before the bridge closed, when Riverside neighbors raised some really well-articulated concerns about traffic congestion, I said, we're going to slow down. We're not going to do anything this coming fall. We're going to take more time. If there's going to be a proposal on the Bass River overlay, it's going to have to be kind of brought down in scale. When the bridge closure happened, I said publicly, we're not touching any rezone, any overlay, as long as we don't have a bridge to drive over. So no, I appreciate you bringing it up, because some people have heard it, some people haven't. So thank you for that. Carrie?
I just wanted to say, too, I believe that intersection you're referring to was a city design that we constructed. So it was one that the city proposed. I'm not saying anyone's fault. I'm just saying we worked with the city on this, on that one.
It was part of a TIP project, 3 intersections. And as I said, the traffic engineers have been out multiple times. I think one of the challenges, one of the features you'll see is, much like the earlier Rantoul Street project at Gloucester Crossing, the default is to send cars down Rantoul because it's 1A, it's a numbered route. And so you see that new geometry coming off the bridge. If you want to go in Cabot, it's actually a right turn. Also, you factor in the complete streets need to provide for other modes of transportation. As I said, safe bike passage down and along Rantoul. And there have been some challenges with the sequencing. And so that's been worked on. And if it needs more work, we'll do more work with the engineers.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. We're over here.
I'm Dan Dwyer. I live on 8 Davis Road in Beverly. So I work in the industry. I'm a geotechnical engineer. I've worked with Mass DOT on several different projects. I just want to get, I've been hearing a lot of the same frustrations that I've dealt with as an engineer, just getting things through and just getting to work and building something. I mean, that's why we all became engineers. We want to build things. We want to get things done. And I know the technical side of this bridge isn't, it's not very complicated. It's a pretty short span. So, with that being said, I guess this is kind of a holistic, overarching question of Mass DOT and funding, and how do we fix this tremendous problem that's in front of us to disseminate this cash and get it through and get things built faster? I mean, we're talking 2035 before both of these bridges. I mean, are there conversations being had at the high levels of Mass DOT to address this significant problem in the state? I mean, obviously, I'm sure there are, but I'm just interested and curious to hear what those conversations are and, how we're going to get to work and just, you look at plans back in the 1930s and 40s, there was 5 sheets and they got it built the next year. And I just, technology hasn't gotten worse. It's just we have more oversight and we have more reviews and more. So I just want to hear your opinion on how we can, holistically make this process more streamlined, from when the taxpayer money comes through the door to getting it to, into construction.
Great. So our process is not the fastest, but it actually has improved, which I know is not something that you see as maybe possible, but we are looking at other ways to improve our process development. We have people in place now because we saw this prior even to the infrastructure coming. We wanted to try and figure out ways to tighten it up. What we have done is we've even hired out people to work in these other environmental agencies in order for them to be focused only on Mass DOT projects to try and tighten their reviews and accelerate the process. So right now at Mass DEP, for example, we have 5 employees that work on just MassDOT jobs because we saw the inadequacies of how quickly things were getting reviewed because they were overburdened, right? So others federal and state agencies are also overburdened. So we've been working with them to set up memorandums to try and get some of our some members in place to help us with our projects. Internally, we have accelerated our reviews. So we, in fact, only allow 30-day review periods on projects because we had been hearing that comment that we were not reviewing projects quickly enough. So often the design process is completed well before the environmental and right-of-way process is completed. And again, that goes back to some of those statutory requirements. So I know it's difficult to hear, and I know that next to me, Frank made reference to the fact that it wasn't atypical to hear of a bridge taking 8 or more years to design. So when I tell you that to get this in 24 is fast, I know that doesn't seem fast, but we have been making efforts to speed up our process because we have had this comment from not just taxpayers, but also from the governor's office as well to speed up our overall design process.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
My name is Paul Barrett. I am a Salem resident and a Bass Haven sailboat member. I'm not clear on the determination of whether it's going to be a fixed bridge or a movable bridge. So 2 questions. Who makes the determination, and when do you guys expect to get that determination?
So our current design as of now had the temporary permanent, but a permanent movable. Oh, did I say that wrong? Temporary fixed, permanent movable was our plan. That's what we demonstrated today. Other people had comments. What I will say is the quicker we can make that decision, the quicker we can get out there. So we're hoping that we can kind of get the feedback from today, look at some of our other options based on some of the feedback, but we really want to turn this around quickly so we can start doing this work like we said in 24. That determination is a combination of getting your feedback. It's a combination of us looking internally and then also working with the mayor's office, and then we'd come back to you. But right now, our plan was a temporary fixed bridge and then a permanent movable bridge so that the time that you would have an inability to go up the river would be limited, only for when we had the temporary structure in place.
So you're not exactly answering my question.
Okay.
So my question is, I believe you said it was either the Army Corps of Engineers or maybe the Coast Guard. So I'm wondering which one of those 2 bodies makes the determination for whether they require fixed or opening. So that's question number 1. And if I'm correct, in one of those agencies making the determination, when do you expect to have that answer from them?
So it would be the Coast Guard, and we can reach out to them after we wanted to speak to the public first to make sure if there was like a really strong push one way or the other. It seems a little split. The real push is to just get it done. So I think now we can go to the Coast Guard and start getting some more of their feedback now that we've had the opportunity to talk to you. Again, that's what we'll do, and then we can reach back out to the community and let you guys know the update after we've had the Coast Guard in place.
Okay, so I can understand that, many people feel that the most important thing is the fastest, but from a boater's standpoint, I'd just like to, put my 2 cents in. It is getting harder and harder to be a boater in this area. I also belong to Salem Willows Yacht Club, and the town of Salem has taken away our yacht club parking lot. So to have a yacht club that doesn't provide parking is a real difficult thing. I mean, one of the things that many people love about the North Shore is the opportunities to enjoy the ocean. And from a boater's perspective, like one of the other gentlemen said, there's more and more assaults and more costs added. So I would just, from a boater's perspective, I'm saying that going back to what one of the other gentlemen said, that if you could look at taking one of the other opening bridges and speeding up the engineering time, but basically from a boater's perspective, I believe that it is regarded as a safe harbor. So when hurricanes come, we need a place to protect our boats. So that's another reason that many of us want it to be an opening bridge. And I really feel that once the determination is made, and with the engineering that we have in this company, between an opening bridge and a fixed bridge, it shouldn't be a matter of years in the difference.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ma'am?
I'm Ann Reynolds. I'm a recent resident, just recent. I live on James Street, and I'm an environmental engineer also, and I work for the state, and I know that you have to do miracles with no money, and if you don't do it right, man, people are yelling at you, right? I know that about working for the state. So I have a question for everybody. We have a resource here called a bus. How many people have taken a bus in the last year? I haven't yet, but I'm gonna. Anybody want to come with me? Because then you don't need your car to get to your boat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and how many people know about the ferry ferry dock, and how many people know about the ferry dock at the aquarium? It looks like an airport, and I'm really used to airports too. So, Ann Reynolds.
Okay.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, Steve, yeah, please, one more, and then we'll wrap after this, I think. Introduction, thanks.
Sorry, my knees are bad. Steve Bissell, I live on Ashton Street. It's one L. If I had that other L, I wouldn't be here because I'd be rich. You mentioned timeline of restrictions. Who poses that?
That's a Coast Guard, I guess. I think, again, an Army Corps, maybe both.
There's got to be some way to supersede a 2-month.
I mean, that one gentleman said there was no fish. So, I mean, if we can find...
No, there are fish because Schubert wouldn't have been there if there weren't fish. Okay, so there are fish.
Yeah.
But my point is, there's a restriction of 2 months. I mean, that's absurd. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. You guys have to pull some strings to get rid of the red tape. I'm sorry. Get rid of the red tape, move the process forward.
Yeah, so
it's the red tape. Get rid of the red tape, and you guys could do your job better. So you, along with your other counterparts in office and mayor, you all need to push hard and get rid of the red tape, because that's what's holding this whole thing back. And I believe that in the footprint that we have, if you do a movable bridge within the footprint, it's going to be the quickest and best thing for the Bass River, and it's gonna. I mean, do that and get it done with. The other thing is the pedestrian walkway. Why not during construction? Can you not put a temporary pedestrian walkway? Do a pedestrian walkway so that people can commute back and forth. That's got to be simple compared to doing all the other stuff. Those are really my only points. So,
No, appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. Okay.
One last.
And
Ron Janard, Janard, 1 Melvin Ave. Is there any way the next time that you have a meeting here, if you do, can you get somebody from the Corps of Engineers here and maybe somebody from the Coast Guard? The Commandant lives on Bayview Avenue in Beverly.
We can try. There's no reason we can't invite him. No, that's fine. And I'm going to guess that if we do this again, we'll get more microphones.
That's fine.
Okay.
But at least if you have somebody representing them, let's get what they feel about this.
Okay.
Okay, because right now, nobody knows anything else except what you're telling us.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's a good point. Thank you.
thanks, Ron. All right, folks, listen, this was scheduled to 8. I appreciate everybody who stayed in here. As you've heard a lot of times tonight, we're all going to be keeping on talking, and we, local elected officials, will be with any of you who can be on November 1st, and we'll just keep moving together. Thanks, everybody.